Welcome. In this video, I will introduce you to the Omnivati online platform for creative ideation. Now, Omnivati has many features and a great deal of functionality, but I'm going to be focusing on what you need to know to start your first project. I assume that this is the first time using Omnivati, and if so, your alt project screen will look exactly like mine does here. It has no projects and we need to start one. So how do we do that? Well, it's pretty simple actually. All you need to do, move your cursor over this plus sign and click it. And then we'll open up this new screen where we can name our project, describe what it is, and define it. Okay. So I'm going to use a very simple name and say new lamp. Okay. So I plan on coming up with a new lamp. How do I describe that? Well, I'm just going to write design a new lamp. Now, your name for the project and your description should be sufficiently detailed that you can easily recognize them and understand them later on. You may end up having many projects, so give it a meaningful name. Also, for the description, provide as much detail as you think is useful because it'll be useful for you over time to come back and refresh your memory about what your goals are, but it's also useful for the rest of the people you're collaborating with for them to all understand and be on the same page in terms of goals. You can also include an image if it helps you. So it might be helpful to have an image, which I'm just going to drag and drop in this box, and then you will see that it is uploaded. I could have also done this by clicking browse and searching through my files. And then the project type is what? Well, we're using a lamp in this example, so it's a product. It could be service or other, and then I will simply click save, and now we have a new project. To begin working on the project, all we need to do is click on this project, okay? And now we are on the dashboard, which you see here on the left. We also have components, matrix, and reports tabs that we will look at later. You can now see the image that I uploaded. We're going to use that as our reference, okay? And we're going to have places where we can define the components of the product we're thinking about, and or if it was a service that, and the attributes. And we'll get to that in a moment. First, though, if you ever realize after you've started a project that you made a mistake in either naming it, describing it, or defining it, you can simply fix that by clicking Edit Project and then updating any of these areas that you need to. So here, I'll actually change this. Maybe I didn't mean new, I meant better lamp. New is not good enough. We need something that's new and better. So we're going to design a better lamp. Everything else was fine for me. So I'll just save that. Everything updates. You see now up here, it says better lamp. If I go to my project screen, it says better lamp. Everything's been updated. Now I can return to this by just clicking on it. All right, now we're back at our dashboard. What do we need to do now? Well, if we're going to use the attribute dependency template, which is what we're going to do, here it's up here, we're going to need to define some attributes. Now you can just jump into defining attributes if you like, but I always highly recommend defining components. Components are the various parts of a product that make up that product as a whole. Okay, so let's jump into that by clicking Add Edit Components. Here you see there's already two components that are listed, internal attributes and external attributes. Now, as a quick refresher, internal attributes are those attributes that we as a company control. For instance, we control how heavy our lamp is, how tall it is, whether it comes assembled or not. These are things that we control. External attributes are things that we don't control. For instance, how bright it is in the room where the lamp is being used, okay? These are things that we do not have control of. So remember, internal things, attributes or components are things that we control. External things, attributes or components are things that we do not control. I always recommend that you keep these two components in your list of components because they're a good place to drop in attributes that don't necessarily align with a specific component of the product that you're thinking about. But let's define some specific components. First off, I will go ahead and include the lamp shade. Notice I have an opportunity here to define the importance of this component. That is completely up to you how important you think it is, and it should be based on your knowledge and expertise. In my knowledge and expertise of lamps, which is primarily usage, I would say the lampshade is pretty important. Now, is this something that's internal, something that we control? Yes, it is. Or if it was external, something we didn't control, we would simply click on this tab to switch it, but it is something that we control. Defining this is important because it influences how your matrix will look. And when we get to that, I'll explain what I mean. And you can include a description if you feel like it's useful. So the covering around the light, let's say light bulb to be clear. Okay, save that. And then appears our new component. What's another thing that we could add? Well, how about the lamp base? Also, it's something I think is very important, something that we control. And then I can include here something like the part of the lamp supporting the bulb and shade. Okay, great. And then one other component I always recommend that you include, because it is a very important component, is the user. The user is very important, and it is not something that we control, right? That's external to us, but this is just simply the person using, using the lamp. Great, so now we have here 5 components. They're all very important, as you can see by these 5 dots, all right? Now, before we jump into doing attributes, I want to show you one thing. If you ever realize that you made a mistake in creating a component, you can click on the 3 dots here and you can edit that component, which will bring you back to this screen. I'll just go ahead and save that. You can also duplicate that component. Why would we want to do that? Well, maybe you have 2 components that are distinct but share a lot of attributes, things like color, weight, size, so forth and so on. You can duplicate it and then you will save yourself some time. If you disable the component, it won't delete the component, but it will not include it in your matrix. And I'll show you the matrix here in a few moments. And if you delete the component, it'll go completely away. My recommendation is never delete components, because if you realize that you do actually need that component, you'll have to recreate the whole thing. Just simply disable it if you don't want to consider it at a given time. Now, we need to define attributes. Okay, so we have certain attributes that will correlate or correspond with certain components. So we'll start doing some of those. So let's start with external attributes. What are some things that go on around our lamp that we don't have control of? Well, things that I would suggest including would be things like the ambient light. How bright is it? So I'm going to include that description. How bright is it in the area around the lamp? Okay. This seems like something very important, not maybe completely over the top important, but very important for the usefulness of and ambience of the lamp. So we'll include it there. And I choose 4, of course, so I get to choose how important these things are. Other attributes which are very important to include. One is time. Okay, so let's include, let's say, time of day. So what time of the day is the lamp being used? Okay. Now that can, of course, correlate with many things, like how bright it is around the lamp. So it's relatively important. The point I want to make here is that you should always include time, and you can include time in a variety of ways. For instance, not only will I include time of day, I will include, let's say, length, of use. How long has the lamp been used consistently? So let's say if I turned it on at the beginning of the day, has it been on all day, a few hours, a few minutes? This could be very important for a variety of things, including heat and so on. Okay, so we'll save that. So now we have some external attributes, all right? What about the shade? What are things that define the shade? Well, how about for one, let's go with opacity. How much, how much light gets through the shade. Okay, that's very important, right? Because if it's completely opaque, we won't get any light out and it's not really a lamp. So that's important, so opacity. Another thing that we could add would be, let's say, just the color, right? The color of the lampshade. And that's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not even going to put a description there. I'm just going to say it's very important because it has to do with, I'm going to say it's important because it changes aesthetics. Okay, so I feel like that's an important thing. You may not agree. You may think the color is not that relevant. So I've done lampshade. What about the lamp base? Well, a few things here we could tinker with. Height. So how tall the base is. I mean, this may be important for some, not for others, so I'll put it middle. And another one would be, let's say, shape. No, not edit component, we're going to edit. So let's say the shape. There we go, shape. The shape of the base. Okay, there we go. Now here's an interesting thing. Here in comments, what we could do is we could include some suggested levels of this. So the shape could be round, could be square, could be pyramid, and so on and so forth, right? Just some comments, some notes about the different types of levels this attribute of shape could take. What about our user? What might be some things about the user? Well, we could do age, right? How old the user is. And I think that might be very important, but why? Well, actually, I'm going to leave a comment so that I remember and my collaborators know why I think this is so important. Safety might be a concern for younger users. Things including weight, so if the lamp were to fall on a child, for instance, that could be very dangerous. Electricity is always something to be cautious about. So that's why I think age is important. And let's say, how about height also? How tall the person is. I don't really think it's that important. I'm just including it to have another attribute, so I'll say that. So you see here, this is not very important. It only has a 5. This is, or a 1. This is very important. It has a 5. And what about other internal attributes? Let's just say the weight. Let's just say the weight. The overall weight of the lamp. And this is moderately important, right? Because things with like transportability and being able to place the lamp wherever the person wants. Save. So what you see now is that we have 5 components, all right? We have a number of attributes for each one. Now, oftentimes people wonder, how many components should I have? How many attributes should I have? And I'm going to give you probably an unsatisfying answer, but it's the correct one. First off, you want to be as comprehensive as possible, because you want to be as inclusive in your attributes as you can, because it'll give you a bigger space to explore for your creative ideation. Same would be true of components, but the important thing is the limit is the depth of your understanding of the product. For me, I understand lamps at a very superficial level. I know they have shades. I know they have a lamp base. I know they have a light bulb in most cases. There's some electronic aspect of it, which could be a component in and of itself, but I don't know enough about these other things to include them in my set of components. Also, same for attributes. There's certain attributes that I do understand and would be able to think about how to tinker with, and there's some that I wouldn't. So be as inclusive and comprehensive as possible to the depth of your personal understanding. Okay, now let's start looking at other things. We've defined our components and our attributes. If we go back to the dashboard, we see here it says you've got this many components, you have this many attributes. Great. Let's start looking at our matrix. Now the forecasting matrix is generated for you by Omnivati. And what you see here is the internal attributes and components are listed at the top. You have your internal components listed on the left and your external components. This is why defining your components is important, okay? If it is external and you cannot manipulate it, you want to make sure that you list it as such so that it does not appear up here, all right? So here we have them all. Now let me hover over a cell. Let's pick a cell here, this one. Notice that when I hover over it, the cell pops out. It also indicates which row and which column we're looking at. So we're looking at the column, internal attributes, overall weight. We're looking at the row, lamp base, shape, okay? So that's what we're going to consider. And we could explore this cell right now, all right? But let's pick a different one. So let's think about something related to, let's say, about length of use and lampshade color, all right? So I'm going to click on this. Once I click on it, you see that this pops up. At the top, you see what we're talking about. We're talking about the attribute color for the lampshade and the attribute length of use as an external attribute. And it says here, the color of the lampshade depends on the length of use. Well, is there a dependency that already exists in the market? Are you personally aware of a dependency out there, a lamp, which the color of the lampshade depends on how long the person has been using it? I personally am not aware of such a dependency. So I'm going to put no here. Click next. All right, now describe the new dependency. You don't have to do this. I could just continue to click next if I wanted to, but I will. The color of the lamp changes the longer it is used. And I'll just put something like it could get darker, lighter, or go through several colors. Great, so we have that. Now I could sketch this, right? I could sketch this on something on my computer and I could drop that image here. Oftentimes that's helpful for helping others understand what your idea is. Now let's list the benefits. What would be a benefit of this? Well, you know, the aesthetics change over time, which is something that it can be very useful for people. The lamp isn't so boring. So that could be one. Who would that be good for? Well, that would definitely be good for the consumer. All right, what about an easy way to see how long the lamp has been on? So maybe if you're worried about overusage, that would also be good for the consumer. And by the way, we could define things. Maybe there are certain benefits that would be for the company, or you see here, we also have other that could be things like society in general, all right? So we have a few benefits. That's always good. If you can't think of any benefits, maybe it's not the best direction to go. What about issues? So issues would be what materials or technology would we need to make this happen? So maybe there's some questions about that. You know, would people, you know, how does this affect matching room aesthetics? So maybe people want a lamp that looks exactly like it looks at any given time. Issues are, of course, up to you, as well as benefits. Now, so I've done that. And then the last part here is this idea feasible? Now, we've seen a lot of different things out there in the world where they change colors, right? Mood rings and shirts that change colors with temperature and so on. So yes, I believe it's feasible. I don't have the technical capabilities, but I'm sure that somebody would. And I really think this is a great idea. So I'm going to rate it as 5. And I'm just going to name it as time, color, changing shade. Okay, I've given it a name so I can easily recognize it, and then I can click save. So I've done that. Well, look here, now this box has changed. You see that it's a dark green. That indicates to you when you're just looking at this matrix, you can very easily see we have an opportunity here because it's red. Let's do another one. How about length of use? How about this? Length of use and opacity, okay? So is there a dependency? Again, I don't think there is, so no. What's a dependency? The shade becomes more or less opaque with time used. Next, benefits. Say awareness of use we could do again. We could do that maybe. Issues, people might get frustrated with, let's say, inconsistent lighting, right? That might be something where, why is it getting brighter or darker, right? Rate the idea. Is it feasible? Probably. Is it great? Opaque. I'm gonna give it this opaqueness. Opaqueness. I'm sorry. Opacity with time. Okay. So I'll just save as that. So I don't think it's that great. What I want to show you here is that these are both green, but you'll notice this is much darker and this is much lighter. This indicates that you have a much higher rating of this idea than this idea. All right, what would be another one that we could do? We could do, let's say, time of day, which we have here in color. Let's do that. And let's just start it. Is this an existing dependency? No, it doesn't exist. We'll go forward. You know what? I'm busy right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this and I'll come back to it later. And the way that I know I'm going to come back to it later is that you see that it's highlighted in yellow here. Okay, so yellow indicates that it's something that's been started but hasn't been finished. Okay, and then let's do a very last one here. Let's say lamp base. Let's say height and let's do lamp base height and shape. So maybe the height changes or the shape changes over the height. Okay, or the height changes over the shape, whatever you would think about it. Are there lamps out there where the shape of the lamp changes as you go up and down the base? Absolutely, they already exist. Are we going to be able to create something new and beneficial by changing this or removing it? Not really, because there's also ones that's not true. So I'll click no here. And Omnivati says, look, there's nothing to work with here. So just go ahead and save this and start looking elsewhere. I save it. You see it appears as red here. So now we know visually what do we see in our matrix. We see that there's no real idea to play with here. There's a really good idea to play with here. There's an idea here, but maybe not that great, and we haven't finished our thinking here. And you can do this for all the cells, okay? Now, last tab here is reports. The reports gives you a quick, easy way to look at all the ideas you've come up with. So I came up with length of use. It had a great rating, length of use, I'm sorry, and color. The name of it's right here, time, color, changing shade. I gave it a great rating, lower rating for this opacity with time. I still haven't finished working on this idea, and this idea has no chance of yielding anything beneficial. All right. So let's come back to our dashboard now. Our dashboard has been updated. So it says here ideas. You have 4. 2 are kind of done and good. 1 is not feasible. 1's in progress. All right. You see here the number of dependencies, how many we've explored. We've explored 4. We have 31 to go. And you would go through this. Now, here's the thing. In many cases, you're going to want to collaborate with others on your projects. Well, how do you do that? There's 2 ways you can do it. And they're listed up here. Circulate project and share project, okay? Now, it's very important that you be aware of the differences here. If you circulate the project, what's going to happen is there's basically going to be a snapshot taken of your project, and it's going to be sent to other people. You'll send them a link. They will open it on their Omnivati platform, and they will see exactly what you see right now. But here's what's important. If they start making changes, you won't see them at all. And if you start making changes, they won't see them at all. Okay. So what it does is it preserves these projects on each person's Omnivati account, and they can do what they want without impacting the other person's project. If you want to have active collaboration, which can be very beneficial in the sense if you can't work at the same time, you can just simply, I'll work on it for a while, then you come back and work on it for a while. You share the project. But then there is one project, one copy of it, and every time someone makes a change, it is recorded. So I might do this amount, share it with my colleague, and then what they would do is start working. And then when I came back, I would see, wow, we don't have 4 ideas anymore. We have 8 or 12 or whatever, and all these things would be updated. All right. The issue here is there's a risk of losing or information being changed without you wanting it to be changed. Okay. So realize that if somebody starts deleting components that you added, they're going to be gone for you as well. So what I recommend is if you are going to share your project, which is this active collaboration method or mode, that you have very clear and defined rules about how to edit it. For instance, don't delete components, simply disable them. If you think an attribute is important, don't delete it, maybe change its rating. Okay, so be very explicit with your collaborators about how you want to engage in the editing process if you've shared your project. Last but not least, you'll notice that there's a bunch of little icons with eyes on them. What they do is they give you information to explain what each of these things are, and they appear throughout. I highly recommend using them if you get stuck. Also, if you get stuck, you have the support button down here, and they can answer questions that either I haven't addressed or which are not addressed by these eye icons. And with that, I wish you the best in your ideation.